Okay guys, it's your boy Tacho here, and we're back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes. Now today I thought we might as well go ahead and update the tier list, because it's been a hot minute since your boy has made any updates to this bad boy. And actually we have gotten a couple of new units and some new refines and resplendent heroes to talk about, so I thought now would be as good a time as any for us to go ahead and add all those changes to the tier list itself. Alright, so we're going to go in order here. We're going to start with the new characters, and then we're going to move on to the new resplendents, and then we're going to do the new refines, and then we're going to finish off with just some random tier replacements that I've done based on you guys' comments on the previous video and some of my own thoughts on the game. Alright, so let's just hop right in. We're going to start things off with the new characters that we've had added. So, since the last time I updated the tier list, we've gotten access to Mustafa and Emran, and both of them are summonable as 4-star units, and I believe Emran is also a 3-star. I'm not sure if Mustafa can be summoned as a 3-star yet. He's definitely summonable as a 4-star because I have actually summoned him as a 4-star not too long ago, but I don't know if he's a 3-star just yet. Probably in the same boat as Altena in that regard. Okay, but our boy Mustafa is automatically, or I shouldn't be calling him our boy, because, I mean, this dude, he's a fully grown man. Look at that beard. Look at that mustache combo. This dude, yeah, Mustafa is a man. So, this man has been added to the S rank immediately after his release, and the reason why he's in the same boat as our classic Axe unit infantry baits like Echidna and Ross. So, as like the two of them, he also has a BST of 172, meaning that he's capable of outscoring the infantry dual skill. And that's fantastic, of course, for those of you that care about building up these units for arena mode or any mode that uses arena scoring. Since if you don't have to run those dual skills, that means you're free to run any A-slot passive you want. And that means stuff like distant counter or anything of that nature is fair game. That's of course going to be a huge problem. Like, another example of a really good infantry axe unit I could toss out there is Brave Ike. And as good as Brave Ike is, if you were to run him in arena modes, you're pretty much delegated to running that dual skill on him if you want to maximize his score, because unfortunately his BST is just not quite high enough to make it over the gap for the dual skills. So if you ran Brave Ike in arena mode, you're not going to be able to run distant counter, unless you knowingly did so and just tanked his score by a couple points. But that's not a big deal at all for Ross, Echidna, or Mustafa. They're free to run distant counter, and they're going to keep their maximum score intact that way. And another really nice thing about these Axe infantry units is that they're just really good counter picks for a lot of the tough opponents to deal with in arena mode. Like Legendary Crom, for example, he's super annoying, but as long as you're not an armored bait unit, you should be fine against him. So these green Axe units come into play there. They're also pretty solid against Legendary Julia, who can be a big threat to deal with too. And Legendary Alm as well. That guy, he's made out of paper, so if you have just enough attack to finish him off in one hit, or if you're fast enough that you may be able to avoid getting double attacked by him, like in the case of Echidna, for example, you should be fine. So I gotta recommend these three infantry axes, Mustafa, Ross, and Echidna. They're just gonna be really strong merges for anybody playing the game that cares about the scoring. So they're definitely gonna be the first options you may want to look into. And really, I mean, the only other unit on this entire list that even scores in the same bin as them is going to be Valbar. And Valbar, he may be an armored unit, so he is already at a disadvantage where he can only move one space. But really, if you only care about scoring, then it's pretty much just those four at the top there in front that you see. So Valbar being able to score as high as he does definitely gives him enough credence to stay in the S tier, I feel. A couple of people were actually arguing for Valbar to be moved down to A tier or possibly even lower. But I will stand strong with that I think Valbar should remain in the S tier, if only because of his scoring potential. It's just super important to have that in Arena. Alright, but that just about covers us for Mustafa. And our second new unit that has been added to the game is Emran. And we're going to go ahead and toss Emran in the A tier here. Now, what's really cool about Emran is that she's the first staff infantry unit that we've gotten that actually has a nice attack and speed combo. where she's at 32 base attack and 34 base speed. And she has a 162 BST overall, which is higher than both Brady and Mercedes, who were previously the highest BST units in that category. So Emran's really cool, and she's definitely going to be worth building up. You guys already know how annoying it is to deal with staff units, in Aether Raids in particular, where they can set up restore traps and get danced and then go to town on your units with the Razzle Dazzle combo. And we also just recently started getting the solo skills as Sacred Seals now, so once we get attack and speed solo as a Sacred Seal, these staff units are just going to be outright ridiculous in the enemy hands, and they're going to be really annoying to deal with at that point. Not that they already are, but just to drive that point home even further. Now, I was actually doing some thinking here when I put Emran into the A tier, and I was low-key kind of thinking I should maybe bump Nana into the A tier as well. She is still statistically our best cavalry staff unit in the game that's free-to-play mergeable, and she's just going to be really strong on any cav line setup in Aether Raids. But of course, statistically, Nana is not quite on the same level as Emran because she has a lower BST, and her low base attack does kind of hurt a bit. And that is the one downside to these staff units, is they really just don't hit that hard. So any decent bait unit that has Null Sea Disrupt and a ton of res is going to make mincemeat out of these staff units. But that still doesn't change the fact that they are hard to deal with, especially against foes that aren't using Null Sea Disrupt. And staffs in general are just super OP. Like, we got the Panic Staff, we got Melancholy, we got Gravity, we got Pain. Like, the list of busted staff effects are just out of this world. So I feel like potentially Nana, and maybe even Corrin and Priscilla as well, just for the fact that they are cavalry staff units, could make the jump into the A tier, but I want to wait on you guys' opinions on that to hear what you have to say first. Do you think their viability on cav lines is enough to bump them up a tier, or should we keep them in the B tier for their middling stats and overall just unoptimal stat lines there? But as I've already said in some of the previous tier lists, I'm not the only person playing the game, so I don't feel like my opinion should be the only one that matters, especially not for something like a tier list. It's very much a community effort, and I need to look to you guys' output and opinions before I can really just finalize anything. Alright, but that covers us for the two new units, so let's go ahead and hop into our new Resplendent heroes now. And the first one we're going to talk about is going to be Roy. So Roy was actually jumped up from the B tier into the A tier, and he makes one of the best uses of the Resplendent BST bonus that I've seen. Pretty much it's him and his father. Him and Eliwood are like just straight up the two best Resplendent heroes, I feel. And Roy being a bait unit with the built-in bracing stance and quick repost refine on his weapon, getting plus 10 to his BST, and then getting plus 10 from flowers if you want to run those on him. Roy really ended up becoming a powerful enemy phaser. And he does have player phase potential as well, because with the plus 2 BST to his speed from the Resplendent ult, that puts him at the same speed as Echidna. So you're free to actually just run like Close Call and Repel on this guy, and then if you wanted to, you could take the speed refine as opposed to the quick repost refine on Binding Blade. And then Roy is going to be free to go to town with that, and he's going to have a very good chance to activate Repel or Close Call's maximum damage reduction there. So Roy definitely deserved to be jumped into the A tier. He does still have his flaws, like his attack power is still pretty low and he hits like a feather. But not the biggest deal, because he is still effective against dragons, and that could be super clutch in modes like Arena, or Arena Assault, I guess more so, since dragons are super common in there, and even though he may not outscore the dual skills, he's still totally runnable in Arena Assault as a counter pick to dragon teams. So definitely don't sleep on this Roy, and definitely don't sleep on him as a super tank either for Aether Raids. Because the quick repost refine is super clutch in that mode, where you can go ahead and also toss on the quick repost Sacred Seal and have him not get punked anymore by impact skills. So units like Tibarn and even his father Eliwood, where they're really reliant on negating your follow-up attack with the impacts, that's not going to fly against this Roy. He can still get the double attack on them with double quick repost. So that's definitely something to keep in mind and take into account. And our next Resplendent hero is going to be Robin, who has still yet to be released, so I can't really comment on Robin as far as like how well his usability is going to go up from this Resplendent alt. But what I can tell you is that his BST was already pretty middling before this. So just getting +2 to all stats on this guy from the Resplendent alt isn't really going to bump up his usage all that much. It was pretty key on Roy because certain things were playing into Roy's favor there. Like his Refine was already pretty solid for baiting, and then the extra speed and the extra damage and defenses really helped him out. But in Robin's case, he doesn't make quite as good use of it because none of his stats are really like super good or in a position where just having +2 points is going to make them over the top. So unfortunate for our boy Robin, but he is going to stay in the B tier for now. And next up, we're going to move on to the refines and cover the units that got refines since the last time I made the list. And we're going to start with the triple armor trio that everybody knows and loves since day one. Most people went ahead and built them up to +10 because they were the kings of score back then. So I'm talking about Sheena, Gwendolyn, and Draug, of course. And all three of them were lucky enough to get their refines, and they got some pretty solid refines to boot. So Sheena and Gwendolyn, I have jumped into the A tier from the B tier. I feel like defensively they are supreme, and they really got some powerful refines. Like in the case of Gwendolyn, she gains a breath effect, a light version of it. It's pretty similar to the huge fan effect, I should say. And she's also gaining defense and res up 4 when the foes initiate combat on her. So Gwendolyn got a really solid refine, and she's capable to ramp into her special and deal some good damage that way. Of course, that was one of the major problems with these three, is that their base attack is just not quite high enough to get the job done in terms of damage. But defensively, they were all pretty solid. So I feel like Gwendolyn and Sheena, with their ability to get to special attacks a lot faster, where Sheena has the killer effect, so -1 special trigger on her weapon, and Gwendolyn got the ramping effect, I feel like they kind of left Draug in the dust. So I bumped them up to the A tier because they can still deal damage with specials. But unfortunately, our boy Draug was having no such luck with his refine. It's still very powerful, of course, for baiting, since it inflicts -6 attack on the foes, and then he gains the Carrot Cudgel effect, so +5 to attack and defense when he's within 2 spaces of an ally, and then he neutralizes any penalties to attack and defense he may be taking. But he still only has 30 base attacks, so he still hits like a feather, even regardless of that. And he also has very low res still, so just because he's inflicting -6 attack on the foes, that still doesn't make him a res tank automatically, so he still has to watch out in that regard. Whereas Sheena and Gwendolyn just have insane defense and res right out the gates, and then now they can ramp into their specials a lot easier. They definitely got the better end of the stick in terms of refines. So I have them in A tier, and I have Draug in the B tier, unfortunately. But that's just the way it goes in Fae. I mean, the waifu bias is definitely still a very real thing. Alright, but moving on to our next refine, we have Donal, who actually jumped up 2 tiers. So previously we had Donal in the C tier, and he was honestly like a hidden sleeper that I thought for sure could be bumped up at least 2 or 3 tiers after he got a refine. The nice thing about Donal is that he had the trainee BST from day one. So he's got a 162 BST, similar to units like Naui and Fa from day one. So Donal was in the 162 BST infantry crew. And his refine is pretty solid. It gives him attack and defense up 4 when he initiates combat, and it negates the foe's follow-up attack. So it's like a light version of Sturdy Impact. And then it also comes with a Brave effect, where he can attack the foes twice in a row. It does do -5 speed on him though, so it may not be quite as easy for him to get quad attacks. But his attack is already pretty strong, and with all that BST he already had, and then the fact that he can have +10 from flowers, I think that's enough to push this guy into the A tier. And he's a very strong Brave Lance option if you want to run him. He can also do quite well in Rally Trap setups and Aether Raids if you wanted to put him in there. Because just any unit pretty much with a impact type of effect in Aether Raids is going to be solid. Because it's really tough for the foes to just double attack and finish them off, unless they have something like Null Follow-Up or something of that nature. And if they're not able to double attack and finish off Donal, then he can potentially get into low HP and queue up some Wings of Mercy shenanigans to just go to town and just make the foe's life that much harder. So definitely some good stuff from Donal. And the fact that he's a blue lance unit also gives him some more credibility with that. Because typically the null follow-up units happen to be really fast sword units, right? So sword units have color disadvantage on Donal. And he's got pretty solid defensive bulk to begin with. So it's going to be really tough for null follow-up sword units to actually have a good time baiting this Donal after his refine. And the same goes for Roy, who I just talked about earlier. He's another red unit, of course. And just because he may be able to pull off the double quick repost thing, that's not really going to do him too much good as far as KOing Donal is concerned. Because that Roy still hits like a feather, and effective against dragons ain't going to be doing him any favors against Donal. So Donal is a pretty solid anti-meta pick, I guess you could say. Just watch out for Brave Ike, of course, but I don't really think Brave Ike is going to be able to KO this guy in one shot, since Brave Ike is still susceptible to the impact effect. And he definitely is going to get Donal below half HP for Wings of Mercy to queue up. So don't sleep on Donal, he became a pretty strong option there. So moving on to our next refine, we have female Corrin. Now, she pretty much got the exact same refine that Saizo got, except there are some minor differences between each. I also had to go ahead and bump Saizo up into the B tier, because I feel like if I'm going to have female Corrin in the B tier, there's really no reason for Saizo to not also be in the B tiers. So he's one of those random units that I decided to just place a little bit higher. Alright, but female Corrin's weapon, she does -7 attack and speed at the start of the turn to foes within 2 spaces. So it's like threaten, attack, and speed plus, I guess you could call it. And then she also gains the stat bonuses to each of her independent stats based on the debuffs the foes may have. So right at the start, if she's doing attack and speed -7 to foes, that also means she's gaining attack and speed +7 to her actual in-combat stats. And that's going to be very helpful for her, of course. And she also comes with built-in attack and speed smoke. Well, it's a little bit better because it also targets the foe that she initiates combat on. But then any foes within 2 spaces of that target are going to take attack and speed -7. Once again, just further powering her up in combat against those foes that have debuffs. And you could feel free to take it a step further and run res smoke and defense smoke on her so she can just really debuff all the foes' stats by 7. And effectively just be at +7 to everything herself. So I feel like this Corrin got a pretty solid refine. She does have some issues though. You gotta watch out, of course, for any foes that may have harsh command can just negate your debuffs, and then when you get initiated on by a foe with no debuffs, then unfortunately this Corrin is going to be in a bit of trouble. And she is still also a dragon type unit, and effective against dragons is still very much a problem. So I feel like the female Corrin, even with her really solid refine, is still going to be in the B tier. And I guess real quick, we may as well talk about Saizo since we are on the topic of him right now. So Saizo's refine does -6 to all stats on the foes when he initiates combat. And that's very good, of course, because he is a ranged unit. So it's going to be pretty easy for him to just snipe any enemy that he wants. And then from there, he's going to gain +6 to all stats based on the debuffs that he inflicted on the foes. But just like Corrin, he has to watch out for harsh command. And just like that Corrin, his res is also a problem. He has very low res. So both Corrin and Saizo, I feel like their res could be a very abusable weakness in the meta where these crazy mage-type units are just running rampant everywhere and they deal so much damage. So having low res, it's not day one anymore where everyone just went plus attack or plus speed minus res. Nah, things have changed since then. Res is a very important stat, and you can't just have it be a dump stat anymore. So that is one slight against both Saizo and Corrin. And similarly, I guess you could say I should probably bump the other dragon units down to the B tier as well, because a lot of people were commenting on that and saying units like Tiki and Fa and Naui should probably be bumped down to B, due to how hard it is for these dragons to survive in the current meta when basically everything in their mama is effective against dragons. But I will still argue in favor of them at least, because they do have the combined defenses and they do have the trainee BST. Unlike female Corrin, for whatever reason, she missed out on the trainee BST that Naui and Fa were able to get day one. And if you have Duo Idun for the duo skill support, then you don't have to worry about effective against dragons anymore, so that definitely would help Naui and Fa come back into their own as super tanks for Aether raids. But Corrin, I feel like Corrin is not really trying to be a bait unit, but rather trying to be an offensive unit that applies some physical pressure. So she plays a little bit differently than the other dragons. And the final refined unit that we're going to talk about today is going to be Leon. And his refine was the Bow of Beauty, where if he initiates combat, he's going to supply the impact effect on the foes, where they can't follow-up attack him. And then he also gains attack, speed, and defense +4. Now, I have no idea why they couldn't go that extra mile for Leon and also give him res up 4 at that point, but they wanted to do our boy Leon real dirty and just not give him any means to build up his res, which is already pretty bad. And he also has -1 special triggers, so he can be a very solid pick for Aether Raids if you wanted him to be on a defense setup and just maybe even be on a rally trap to give headaches to the foes trying to bait him. But his res is a serious issue, and a lot of people were playing this guy as a bait unit before the refine, where they were running a ton of bait type skills on him due to his very nice physical bulk. So a lot of people were hoping that he would get an enemy phase style refine where it's building up his defense and res or making it easier for him to bait the foes. But they just went in the complete opposite direction with that, and they gave him a player phase refine. So I know a lot of people weren't too happy about that because their previous Leon builds had to be scrapped in favor of a makeshift player phase build after that point. But he did get a pretty good refine, and anytime you have access to an impact type skill on your weapon, you are looking pretty good in this meta. So I definitely had to bump him up from the D tier all the way up to the B tier. And the final thing we're going to cover is some of the new placements for the older units, and we already went over Saizo, who I was going to talk about, but we do also have Barst, Mordecai, and May that we're going to talk about here. I guess we can start off with May since she jumped up to the S tier, which means, of course, that, in my opinion, she's one of the top merges to go for. Now, the reason why May got bumped up is because she's basically the exact same thing as Lilina. They have almost the exact same stats, like May's got 36 base attack while Lilina has 37, and they both have the death blow effect on their refine. Now, the difference with Lilina and May is that Lilina has chill res built into her refine, while May has attack and speed link. So that refine can be real nice for supporting your other allies and getting some stat bonuses on them. And you could take it a step further with May by giving her defense and res link as well, and just allowing her to provide +6 to all stats to any allies that use assist skills on her or get targeted by them. And it's really nice actually having the link skills as stat buffs instead of like start of turn buffs like the wave skills and the tactic skills and so on. Because if you're playing in Aether Raids and the foes have panic effects in play or broadleaf fan effects in play that can really destroy you for having hard buffs, it's going to be way better to have the link skills because you can pick and choose when you want to activate those and you're not always going to have them in play. So you can prevent the foes from punishing you for running hard buff skills like that. And definitely having double link skills on May is going to be a way to go. But if you wanted to play her similarly to Lilina and run her as a nuke mage that just does big damage, she can do that as well because you're free to run Special Spiral in the B slot for her instead. And she's going to be able to ramp into specials and deal massive amounts of damage. All you would really have to do is give her Death Blow as a seal and then maybe support her with a unit on the team that has chill res as well. So in that regard, she'd be gaining a little bit more effects than Lilina would, where Lilina has chill res built in, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Lilina has to be the one that has chill res. Like, you could just run it on somebody else on the team, preferably a dancer as a support unit, and then they could do chill res on the foes, and then Lilina's chill res effect on 4Blaze doesn't even matter at that point. So I guess May is in slightly better of a position than Lilina for that regard. So I decided to bump May up for that. And next up, we're going to talk about Mordecai, who got bumped up from the B tier into the A tier. Now, Mordecai, I've always thought Mordecai was a good unit. He does have one little issue where his res isn't really the best. But that's not even the biggest deal for Mordecai, because he's the king of smiting in this game, and when he smites your allies, he's going to debuff any foes within 2 spaces by -4 to everything. So combined with stuff like the Broadleaf Fan and Micaiah's duo skill and like all these crazy things you can do nowadays, where you can just really punish the foes for having debuffs, Mordecai is definitely going to come into his own, And he's also very helpful for units like Corrin F and Sizo, where, yeah, I mean, Sizo and Corrin F, they do get +7 or +6 potentially to all their stats based on debuffs that the foes may have. But that's only after the first round of combat that they enter, because they're not going to be able to realistically debuff the foes unless they already initiate combat, right? But you can totally fix that with Mordecai and just smite them into action with him and get some instant debuffs on the foes like that for them to really take advantage of. So Mordecai is super clutch, and he's also going to be a really good option for a lot of people. When he has the defense super boon, he actually scores in the same bin as the dual skills. So you wouldn't have to run a dual skill on him in the A-slot passive, and he's free to run whatever A-slot skill he wants. So that's definitely a huge advantage to Mordecai if you're going to run him in modes like Arena and such. And there's really just nothing like Mordecai in the game right now that is a complete smite god and can debuff the foes that crazily. He's also a beast type unit, so if you need him to help transform some of your other beast units, like for example, Rayson, Leanne, and Tibarn, and Nasala, and all those really good beast type units, Mordecai is going to be our boy for that. So definitely don't sleep on Mordecai. He deserves to be in the A tier, I feel. And the final unit we're going to talk about today is Barst, who got bumped up from the C tier into the B tier. Now, this was probably the most debated unit on the entire list, because a lot of people were just not happy with his placement in the C tier, and I can totally see it. I mean, he gets the Fury 4 effect pretty much, where +4 to all stats, and he also has the Wrath effect, so Barst is not to be trifled with. You can do some big crazy damage numbers with this guy, and if you also run Wrath on him in the B slot and just double up on Wrath, you can get some crazy bonfires off with this guy, or crazy Ignises, and just completely shatter your enemies into glass. So Barst totally deserved to be bumped up, and that was just a big oversight on my part, so I apologize to any of you Barst fans out there. But this is really the reason why it's very important that I do the tier list in this manner that I've been doing it, where I look to you guys' comments in the comments section, and then all the things that you guys have to say has a big impact on the tier list when I update it. So that's all for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed the tier list and the discussion about the units, and also the new placements. And just like last time, I hope you guys are ready to just swarm the comment section and let me know any of the mistakes you may see or any placements that you're not happy with. I love having open discussions like this for the tier list videos, because it just gives me a better sense of where the community stands on these unit placements, and we can have a little bit of a back and forth discussion there. So I think that's healthy for the game and very good for the community. So as always, this is your boy Tacho signing out. Once again, thanks for watching the video, and I will catch you guys again on the flip side.